Well, hi to our Fargo Baptist Church family, and welcome to While We're Away. I'd like to talk today about help for a hurting heart. Help for a hurting heart. In Psalm 147 and in verse number 1, it says, "Praise ye the Lord, for it is good to sing praises unto our God. For it is pleasant, and praise is comely. The Lord doth build up Jerusalem. He gathereth together the outcasts of Israel. He healeth the broken in heart, and bindeth up their wounds." I like verse 3. He healeth the broken in heart, and bindeth up their wounds. Now, the heart that's being spoken of here is not this physical heart. It's not that little muscle inside the left side of your chest that's about the size of your fist that pumps dozens of times every minute until the day you die, all your lifetime pumping and sending blood throughout the body. No, the heart that's spoken of here is that part of you that feels, yea, that hurts. And we find out here that we have a great physician, the Bible says, that heals the broken heart. He healeth the broken in heart and bindeth up their wounds. Stories told years ago about a policeman who was driving by the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City, and he saw a man who had climbed up to the top and was ready to jump, and the policeman stopped his car and he climbed up to the top himself and began to try and talk that man down, and the man just wouldn't listen. He was going to jump and take his life. And the policeman said, "Well, if I can have 5 minutes of your time to tell you why you shouldn't jump, would you listen?" And the man said, "Yes, but you have to give me 5 minutes afterwards to tell you why I should jump." So the policeman went on to talk about how life is worth living, and there's going to always be hope, sun will rise again tomorrow, and so on. And his 5 minutes was up. And then the other man began to talk about why he wanted to jump. And he mentioned the wars in the world, the terrorism, the price of gas, the food shortage, the economy, famine, pestilence, all this stuff. And by the time he was done, it was said that the policeman joined hands with the other man and they jumped together. Well, that's not a true story, but sometimes you feel like that. There's enough in this world to hurt over. And if you're not going through it right now, you've gone through it in the past, and not trying to ruin your day, but you will go again through it in the future sometime. So is there hope for the hurting heart? I mentioned last week how Ann Landers, a syndicated columnist, got many thousands of letters over the years with folks having different problems, and they asked her, what is the biggest issue? And she said, well, fear and hurt and regret and things along those lines. The Bible teaches that we're actually born into trouble. In Job 5:7, it says, "Yet man is born into trouble as the sparks fly upward." We're born into trouble. It's like waiting for us when we're born, if you can imagine that. You say, well, Pastor, it shouldn't be that way if we're saved, if we know the Lord, if we've been born again and we're Christians. Well, I wish that were true, but the truth is, especially for Christians, there are going to be problems. And in fact, the Bible says in 1 Thessalonians 3:3 that no man should be moved by these afflictions, for yourselves know that we were appointed thereto. And so the truth is, when you become a born-again Christian, you actually have some new enemies. You have the world working against you now. You have your flesh working against you now. And of course, you have the devil working against you. And if you look at these three things, you find, first of all, now you're resisting the flesh. You're not caving into it. You're trying to follow the Lord and obey Him and please Him. And your flesh is saying, well, do this or do that. And you have to resist that with the Spirit. Then you have the world working against you. You're not going the same direction as the world anymore. In fact, you've turned that thing 180 degrees and they don't like that. Suddenly you've turned the cat the other way and you're rubbing the fur the wrong way as it were. And so the world is going to say, who do you think you are? And suddenly you have the world resisting you. Of course, thirdly, you definitely have the devil resisting you. In fact, the devil resists me every second of the day. I don't know about you, but everything that we're trying to do for God, he absolutely detests that. And so he is going to put roadblocks in your way. And by the end of the day, there's so much resistance, you just feel like you've been working against the wind, running against the wind all day long. And so, again, 1 Thessalonians 3:3 says, to Christian people, that no man should be moved by these afflictions, for yourselves know that we are appointed thereunto. So I have to be honest and let you know that even Christian people are going to be familiar with burdens. And Christian people are going to be familiar with heartaches. Now, we find here back in Psalm 147 that it says, He, that is God, healeth the broken in heart and bindeth up their wounds. That's a blessing to know. We have a God who hurts with us, a God who binds up our wounds, because life is a vale of tears. In fact, my daughter did at one time photography for an organization called Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. And it was a group of people that would call a photographer in the area whenever there had been a death of a baby, a stillborn, or something along those lines. And she would go to these and photograph the parents with the child. And it was heartaching to even look at the pictures. What a traumatic thing that would have to be. What a heart-wrenching thing that would have to be. And so, yes, trials are a part of life. But how do we as Christians deal with them? Well, we find here a couple of wonderful promises from the Bible that I want to close with today. The first one is Luke 4:18. Now, back during the Old Testament times, Isaiah the prophet in Isaiah 61 had said this very thing. Now the New Testament comes along. Christ is actually back in his hometown, Nazareth, and he goes into the synagogue. I've been to the ruins of this synagogue. I've walked amongst the footprint of the synagogue, which is still there, that Christ said this in. And you can even know where the podium or the pulpit would have been, where Jesus would have actually taken the scrolls and looked for Isaiah 61 and found this passage. And this is what he said. In Luke 4:18, he said, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He hath sent me to heal," notice, "the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, and to set at liberty them that are bruised." Life can be bruising sometimes. But Jesus said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor, sent me to heal the brokenhearted. And then we find this in Hebrews 13:6. As a result, the Bible says to Christians, so that we may boldly say, "The Lord is my helper, and I will not fear what men shall do unto me." The Lord is our helper, and he gets us through this life we're in. In Isaiah 51 and in verse number 12, God says, "I, even I, am he that comforteth you." I am he that comforteth you. And then finally, I'll close with this promise. In Matthew 11:28, Jesus said, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Isn't that heartwarming? Isn't that wonderful? And hopefully, isn't that hope for a hurting heart? Well, let me just say, God bless you, and join me back here tomorrow with another thought on hope for a hurting heart.
When we asunder part, it gives us inward pain, but we shall still